Australia has reduced its greenhouse emissions by 78% since 2005. That's according to a new report from the CSIRO out just days ago. I'm joined by Julia Waite, who leads Meat and Livestock Australia's Carbon Neutral 30 projects. Julia, thank you so much for being here with us. If we look at this particular report, it uses 2021 data, but what were some of the biggest drivers, I guess, to that reduction in emissions?
Sure. So the report that you're referring to, we release every year to benchmark the red meat sector's progress.
I think our camera's having a little issue, Julia. I'll just get you to move a bit closer to me. The fun of live TV.
The fun.
Come on, in on close. Lyndsey likes to do it too.
We can improvise. Here we go. So back to
I'll just get you to move in a bit more so we've got you there.
Right.
Beautiful. There you go. You're in the host chair. First you're a guest, now you're Lyndsey Douglas. She would, some would be jealous to have that. So back to it. This report out this week, 78% emissions from 05. Obviously that, for those that aren't aware, is the key indicator because that's Paris, when they've put that number as. What are some of the drivers in terms of why our emissions have gone down?
Sure. So the 78% is a huge contribution towards net greenhouse gas emissions reduction that we should all be incredibly proud of. That's currently being driven significantly by increases in carbon sequestration on land associated with livestock. So graziers manage about 50% of Australia's land mass. That's a huge potential for carbon storage in soils and vegetation. So what we're really focused on for the rest of the decade is what we can do about our direct emissions, the emissions that we produce to raise the livestock and create the product that we grow. So that's the focus for R&D now.
How much of that data, I know, noting we had some lower herd numbers and whatnot, how much of that are these, I guess, influences to this outcome?
Sure. So the changes in national flock certainly play a role, but the biggest piece of that pie is increases in sequestration in the veg on land associated with red meat grazing. So we did get an extra bump between 2020 and 2021 with those really favourable wet conditions for growth. So we're recipients of that in terms of our net progress. We don't expect it to continue as strongly as that, and we're hoping to see some of those technologies and research come to the fore in the next part of the decade.
Now, tell me a bit more about that technology. Where are things headed?
So we don't want to over-rely on sequestration. So where we're focused in our emissions avoidance portfolio is really looking at low methane pastures, genetics, and low methane additives and supplements in the diet. So if we consider genetics, what if we could create long-term cumulative change in the herd by selecting for not just low methane animals, but also a more fertile, feed-efficient herd. With low methane supplements, like we've heard of this red asparaginopsis, the seaweed. There's also
it's all the rage.
All the rage. We've got plenty more in the toolkit as well. We know they work in dairy and feedlots, up to 90% methane reduction in those controlled environments. But how do we get them working out in the paddock and in these extensive grazing systems where we know most of our beef is produced? That's the real challenge.
Oh, completely. If we look at the seaweed, for those that, we've got a range of viewers on Beef TV, for those that may not have come across it, give us the 101.
Sure. So a really great Australian born innovation with Future Feed. A joint venture between CSIRO and university partners found that a particular type of seaweed that we can harvest when it's fed in a controlled environment with a daily feed regime can actually suppress the pathways that create methane in the rumen of cattle. As we know, methane is a byproduct of digestion. How can we modify that perhaps and then create more energy for live weight gain, which is going to drive farm performance? That's the ultimate goal of the research that we do.
Great. I want to touch on another thing you just mentioned was about genetics, and tell me if you're not allowed to speak on this from MLA, and I'll make sure I hopefully look after you there. Is that, I guess, opening the door for things like gene modification?
That's something,
it's a contentious issue.
Sure, and I know that comes up a lot more in the pasture space where we can maybe upregulate some properties in the plant that have a natural methane suppressing result. That's certainly something that's been looked at overseas. For the animal genetics, no, it's about breeding index that are probably very familiar to a lot of producers, but trying to combine those traits. So we're not wanting to select for a low methane animal if we get a negative trade-off in some other part of the animal performance that is important for our profitability. So how can we combine fertility, calving ease, feed conversion efficiency with that naturally low methane animal to ultimately have long-term change in the herd?
It's so complex.
Yep.
I guess if I'm a producer and, you know, this conversation can be daunting to some, why should I care?
Well, probably number one, we tend to do things in response to our customer. We do put the customer first. That's why we produce such a great quality product here in Australia. And so we are seeing most of the drivers for this come through the supply chain, who are looking to appease their shareholders, their financial markets, and anticipating a consumer that wants this product down the track. But in terms of why we should care today, I think the number one place to start, all this R&D can seem a bit remote, but the number one place to start is that managing for lower emissions on farm isn't mutually exclusive with farm performance, and we can actually have a win-win benefit with some of these on-farm strategies that drives profitability and productivity.
Where could producers start?
Sure. First place to start, I would say, coming back to data, I'm sure you're going to hear this a lot during the week.
No, go for it.
We need to have good farm records to begin with. So
no paper stock books and...
No, well, look, you're going to make your life hard later on, perhaps, is all I'd say. So really focusing on records of your herd inventory and purchased inputs. They're the two crucial things you need to be able to estimate your emissions intensity. And so that's how much emissions you produce per kilo of product that you raise on farm. So that's the first place to start, and it's a really direct correlation with efficiency. So any change that you're making on farm, just those 1% incremental improvements are going to show up in your lower emissions intensity. So anything you can do to uplift weaning rate, improve finishing weights, that's going to show up in a lower emissions intensity, and it's also going to be great for the bottom line as well. So.
If we look at carbon credits, give us the explainer.
Okay, that's a big topic. That's a big topic. So for CN30, our industry goal, carbon credits don't enter the picture for us, so we can leave all that complexity behind. When we estimate sequestration in the red meat industry, we take a satellite image of Australia, and if there's been a physical change in the landscape, a tree that's there now, that's counted. That's real change. In terms of the carbon market or biodiversity market now, what it can offer producers, there's certainly an opportunity there for some in the right region, the right condition. The next question that usually follows is, if I earn credits, what should I do with them? Should I keep them? Should I sell them? There's certainly a premium attached to carbon credits at the moment, as we know. And the strong message does seem to be, potentially wait and see. But I think for any producer, if they're foregoing a strong financial incentive, then there needs to be an equally strong incentive from somewhere else in the market to, justify them foregoing that opportunity.
What do you mean by that?
There is a big question around if producers have earned their own carbon credits through change in their property, there's going to be demand from the market for those offsets from generally the big polluting industries. They want to buy those credits, and so that's quite an attractive opportunity that adds another incentive for producers to undertake these projects because there is a financial premium attached. But the counter voice is that those credits might be either more valuable in the future or they might be valuable to that farm business to lower their emissions baseline in future. So lots to think about.
Totally. Now, I'm going to keep going with you because I'm finding it interesting. I've got some of your time today and you told me I'm first cab off the rank, so we'll keep hitting it.
Give me my practice.
Give you practice, exactly. Nothing like practice on live TV, hey? So in terms of, I guess, the Australian Beef Sustainability Framework, that update, which Mark Davey will have on tomorrow morning after he presents that, we know we might see an updated figure about how we're tracking towards CN30. Are you able to sprinkle some dust for us and let us know where we're headed?
Sure. Sold out event, so if you haven't got your tickets, you'll have to hear it in the grapevine after the event. But the ABSF launch is just a fantastic initiative, really industry-led, showing the credentials of Australian grass-fed beef producers to our customers. And so they'll be breaking down of that, that big number, that 78% for our industry total, they'll be releasing the credentials for the beef industry specifically. So
are we going to get there by 2030?
Oh, I hope so. We're certainly throwing everything we can at it, and we're certainly helped by the great work of the Australian producer.
I know scientists have said there have been some concerns about us getting there, perhaps some saying that we won't get there. Are they valid?
I think where we are, we can't necessarily predict the future. I said those changes in climate conditions can certainly alter how we're tracking. And the CN30 goal was set based on a very confident assumption around investment in research, market conditions, a supportive policy environment. We hope to see all of that play out and that speed of innovation occur. But right now, CN30 has been really successful attracting a lot of co-investment from the private sector into the work that we're doing. So people who want to come on the journey, they want to invest in R&D with us to tackle this challenge. That's coming through. And I think at the end of the day, it's been great at telling customers of beef that we recognise their concerns and we're doing something about an issue they really care about.
Julia, thank you so much for your time on Beef TV. Well, guys, we are now off to a break. Stay with us. More action here from the studio.